Yeah, what's going on, y'all? Wanted to make another video here on something that will not be on the exam. And I'm trying to get over the noise here from the highway over here, so I'm gonna try to speak up here a little bit for y'all, okay? But this is not something that you will find on any of the amateur radio exams. But I wanted to make y'all, you newcomers to the hobby, aware of what I will call the politics of amateur radio. And with that, I am not referring to partisan politics such as Republican versus Democrat, although it may well be deemed a little more conservative versus liberal, liberal versus conservative. And this is something that's been around at least since I've been in the hobby back in the mid 80s. And I'll try to cite some examples of what I'm talking about so y'all know what to expect, what you're looking at, what you're seeing. Okay? Now, you will have conservative camps in the amateur radio service. Examples of this came back in the late 80s when the codeless license was being debated. Okay. The conservative elements of the hobby said we all had to pass the CW exam to get our ticket. Everybody else should too. It's a benchmark of the hobby, helps keep out the riffraff, helps keep out the profanity and garbage of CB, etc. Okay. Helps keeps the standards of the hobby high. Although many of these guys couldn't have passed a code test again at that point. You know, they had been hams for 20, 30 years and couldn't have passed a code test again if their soul depended on it. Okay. They would deem that it was an essential part of the hobby. The more liberal branch said, hey, it's an old mode. Not everybody uses it. We can increase the numbers of the hobby far more if we drop the requirement, start bringing new people into the hobby, train them properly. We won't have the CB problem. If we maintain the technical standards and the written exams properly, we won't have uh, the childish problems that has plagued CB for a lot of years. For the longest time, I held the conservative line. I myself had to pass the 5 word a minute Morse code exam for my novice, the 13 for my general, the 20 for my extra. But you know, after reviewing my position on that, after sitting back and thinking about it, you know, on the one hand, I can say, okay, if I wasn't forced to learn it, if I didn't have to learn it, I wonder if I would have ever learned it and thus enjoyed what is now, to me, one of my favorite modes. I like it now because I had to learn it. But at the same time, I was also dealt a surprise. In the, I want to say it was about 2007, 2006, 2007. A couple of folks started a Morse code club called the Straight Key Century Club. This was for some old school traditionalists who prefer mechanical sending of Morse code. I mean, you can send CW with a computer program. They have apps for your phone now that'll do it. Sit there, listen to it on your computer to improve your skills, etc. Send it back and forth over the air with the computer as long as you've got the interface for the equipment to do it. Besides, and something I'll try to talk about later and show y'all what I'm talking about. Each HF rig will have, at least the newer ones, will have what's called a built-in keyer, and you can plug in a set of paddles. Okay, and this plugs into the rig by means of a 3-pin connector, like a stereo connector, either 1/8 inch or 1/4 inch stereo connector, and it's got two levers on it. Okay, one will automatically send the dits, the other will send the DAWs. So you press on the one lever, you get dit 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 automatically. The other, you press, it goes da 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 da. You squeeze them together at the same time, it'll start going da 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 da. And then you form your characters just by moving back and forth, hitting the levers in the right sequence. Okay. Some of these hacks said, no, now let's go old school with this, and go back to old time mechanical sending, like the guys would have done it back in the 50s, okay, the 40s, the 50s, etc. And much to my surprise, this group has really taken off. Since that 2006, 2007 inception, I know I can't quote the exact number off the top of my head, but I know there are over 20,000 of people that support that way of thinking. And I suspect a large number of them came from the no code element. People that were not mandated to learn it to pass their technician license, etc., but are learning it because they want to. They find it enjoyable. And that's something I preach to them. That when they're learning it, enjoy it instead of making it a chore. So, and an issue we ran into back then, the American Radio Relay League, which, to their credit, does a lot of good work for the amateur radio service. Their bulletins, their code practice, the monthly QST magazine, all the publications, the operating manual, the ARRL handbook, things you can look at online and buy for yourself if you want. The technician study guide, the general study guide, the extra study guide. They put out a lot of good work. But when I was first getting into the hobby, they were solidly anti no code license. Solid. I heard that from who was then vice president of the ARRL, Dave Sumner, K1ZZ. He was at a ham fest over here at St. Charles, Missouri in 1987, I believe that was. And one of the guys I was with, Dave was in a forum discussion. And one of the guys I was with got up and asked him a question. What is will the ARRL ever support a no code license? And he said, absolutely not. I was sitting right there when he said it. Not 4 years later, they were supporting it. And many in the amateur radio service viewed the ARRL as a sellout. That they were supporting that position only to sell more copies of QST, get more members to the ARRL, sell more of their publications, the handbook, the operating manual, etc. These people were alleging that was the sole reason. The ARRL is membership based, by the way, although you don't have to be a member to buy their products or listen to the CW exam or anything. But if you want to get QST on a monthly basis, you do have to be a member. Although you can buy it over the counter if you so choose. But that's here and there. Okay, now on a local level, you will also see politics in that regard at your local club. You'll get guys that have been around for 20, 30, 40, 50 years who think they're all in all and all beats all. Well, hey, I've been here for up teen years. I've been a ham for a bajillion years. I've been a member of this club for so many years. And thinks that gives them a license to make the rule of law. When a new person coming along could simply ask a question, hey, couldn't it be done this way? Or ask something, couldn't something be done a little better? And of course, they don't want to hear it. And I'm sure you all have seen similar attitudes with churches and other organizations that y'all have been a part of. Newcomers are, you know, have nothing to say. Okay. So, not that I'm condoning that. I'm just trying to give you all a heads up on what to look at. So, when you get involved in a local club, sit back for a little while, just kind of watch, learn your cast of characters, and kind of move softly for a little bit till you get in and get a feel for everything and everybody, and know what's going on. Now, a legitimate concern, I will say, is this here. Amateur licenses are valid for 10 years from the date they are issued. Okay, so if yours is issued today, it will expire, 7/11/31. There is an organization, W5YI. When your license starts getting close to expiring, they'll start sending the information. Oh, we can renew that license for you. Fill out the 605, send us, $5 or $10, and we'll get it renewed for you. No need to do that when you can send the 605 to the FCC direct for nothing, and they'll renew it for free, or you can do it online. Register with a username and a password, as long as you've got your FRN and everything. Do it online for free. Okay. My allegation, they're just doing that for the money, not for the betterment of the amateur radio service. So that is one gripe I do have. Okay. An example of the partisanship that came along in a radio club local to me. When I was first getting into it, we've discussed repeaters and repeater stations. Local club had one. It was put together with basically some older equipment. Didn't have a lot of fancy bells and whistles. Did have a phone patch. But a couple of the guys wanted to go in, buy a new repeater. One with all the fancy bells and whistles and the talked and did the deviation checks and all this kind of stuff. They were willing, and this repeater was expensive. I want to say to the tune of about $5,000 in 1985-86 money. A couple of these boys were going to take and put their money together, buy the repeater, loan that money to the club, and say, hey, out of X amount of membership dues, you can pay us back the $5,000 until it's paid off, and then it formally belongs to the club. Well, many of the old hacks in the club, not interested. The repeater we've got works fine. We don't need all this fancy crap, shit. Now, so these couple of boys, okay, went out, bought the repeater, got coordinated on another frequency, and a second club blew up here local and really took off. So there's a beauty of capitalism and showing you how a little bit of old school and new school mixes together in terms of amateur radio. Again, not something that will appear on any test you will take, but just something to look for when you're on the air. Best I can tell you, again, sit back, listen, pay attention to some of these folks so you know who they are, where they're coming from, etc. You'll still find much of the the old school, just shut up and learn the code guys versus Morse code is old, antiquated, let's get rid of it, versus people that fall somewhere in the middle, things like that. And you'll still find a lot of people too that are very much into the old equipment, the old vacuum tube stuff. That, I might add, is not necessarily a political game, just some people like the old equipment. So, that's not anything to get real excited about. But all right, folks, that about covers it for this here. The politics of amateur radio. Something I wanted to give everybody a heads up about. Next video, I downloaded the app for the technician class test, and figure maybe later on we will start going through some of the questions, and I'll start discussing some of that with you. Try to help all of y'all through that. So, any questions, comments, etc., please leave it down in the comments, and I'll try to address as best I can. With that, thanks y'all. Jimbo out.